True real-life story. She watched him claim another mate. So she left and found strength in his enemy Alpha. There are moments in life that split everything into before and after. One moment you are standing in a room full of people, laughing, feeling safe, and the next moment, the ground just disappears from under your feet. This is a story about one of those moments. And more importantly, it is a story about what one woman chose to do after it happened. Her name was Adaize. She was 28 years old, and by most measures, her life looked pretty good from the outside. She had a steady job she was proud of, a small apartment she had decorated herself with plants and second-hand books, and a relationship of 3 years with a man named Kofi that she believed, with her whole heart, was going to lead somewhere good. Kofi was the kind of man who walked into a room and everyone noticed. He was confident, loud in a fun way, and had this charm that made you feel like the most important person in the world when his attention was on you. When Adaize first met him, she thought she had found something real, and maybe at the beginning she had. But over 3 years, something had quietly changed, and she had been too close to it to see clearly. She had slowly, without realizing it, started building her whole life around him. His friends became her friends. His schedule became her schedule. She stopped painting, something she used to love, because he always made a small joke about it. She stopped going out with her own friends on Friday nights because he preferred her home. She told herself this was just what love looked like. You make room for the person you love, you adjust, you compromise. She kept telling herself that, even when deep down something felt a little off. One evening, Kofi invited her to a party at a mutual friend's house. It was a normal kind of gathering, people they both knew, music playing, the usual Friday night crowd. Adaize was actually in a good mood that night. She had dressed up a little, was laughing with some people near the kitchen, and for a moment, everything felt light and easy. Then she felt it. That strange shift in the air when something is wrong but you do not yet know what. She noticed people looking in one direction, then quickly looking away. She saw eyes that landed on her face for half a second too long. She turned around slowly. Kofi was standing across the room, and next to him was a woman Adaize had seen before. A younger woman, someone from their wider circle, someone Adaize had never thought twice about. Kofi had his hand on the small of her back in that very specific way. The way you touch someone when you want everyone to know they belong to you. And then, and this is the part that still does not feel real when Adaize tells it, Kofi raised his glass and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I want you all to meet my woman. He did not look at Adaize when he said it. He did not look at her. After 3 years. After everything, he just stood there with his arm around someone else and smiled at the room like nothing was wrong with what he had just done. The room went quiet, or maybe it did not. Maybe people kept talking and laughing, but in Adaize's head, everything went completely silent. She felt her friend Chisum grab her arm. She heard someone whisper her name. But she did not move. She just stood there and looked at him, and he finally met her eyes across the room, and what she saw in his face was not guilt. It was something closer to challenge, like he was waiting to see what she would do, like he expected a scene. She gave him nothing. She reached down, picked up her bag, and walked out. The walk from that room to the front door felt like the longest walk of her life. People stepped aside. Someone said her name again. She kept moving. She pushed the door open, stepped into the cool night air, and walked to her car. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time, without starting the engine. She did not cry. She did not call anyone. She just sat there, hands in her lap, and felt the full weight of what had just happened settling over her, like something very heavy and very final. She drove home alone that night. The days after were not like the movies. There was no dramatic music, no moment of sudden clarity, where she decided to change her life, and immediately felt better. It was just hard, plain and ordinary and hard. She woke up every morning, reaching for her phone out of habit, wanting to call him. She would catch herself halfway through typing a message, and then stop. She lost her appetite for a while. She cried in the shower because it felt like the only private place she had. She replayed that evening over and over, not because she wanted to, but because her brain would not let it go. Kofi sent her one message, just one. It was not an apology, it was an explanation. The kind that is really just a justification dressed up in softer words. She read it once and did not reply. She broke the informal arrangement they had where she spent most of her time at his place. She went back to her own apartment fully, dragged her things back, and stood in the middle of her small living room, feeling very alone, but also, and this surprised her, very much herself. Like she had walked back into a version of her life she had forgotten was there. She found her old painting supplies in the back of a cupboard. She did not start painting right away. She just put them on the table and looked at them for a few days. Her friend Chisam pushed her to keep going to work, keep showing up, not disappear into her apartment. 2 weeks after that night, there was a professional event in the city, a networking thing for people in her industry. Adayeze almost did not go. She did not feel ready to be around people, to smile and make small talk and pretend she was fine. But Chisam came to her apartment, did her hair for her, and essentially walked her out the door. The event was exactly what she expected. Polished, a little stiff, everyone trying to sound impressive. She stood near a window with a glass of water and was honestly thinking about how soon she could leave. That is when a man came and stood near her. Not in a pushy way, he just moved to the same window, looked out at the city below, and said quietly, almost to himself, "These things always feel longer than they actually are." She almost laughed. She looked at him. He was tall, calm-looking, the kind of person who did not seem to need anything from the room he was standing in. He introduced himself as Nana. She knew that name. Kofi had mentioned it before. Not kindly. Nana was someone Kofi considered a rival, someone he spoke about with that particular kind of irritation men reserve for people they secretly respect but would never admit to. She had always imagined Nana as someone arrogant, someone like Kofi but sharper. He was nothing like what she had imagined. He was direct, yes, but not in a way that felt like showing off. He asked her what she did, listened when she answered, and then told her honestly that he had heard about what happened at the party. He said, "I know who Kofi is. I am sorry he put you through that." No performance, no effort to impress her. Just a plain and honest thing said directly. She did not know what to do with that. She had been so used to men who talked around things, who performed emotions without really having them. This felt different. A little uncomfortable, actually, because it was so straightforward. They talked for a long time that evening. About work, about the city, about small things, and a few bigger things. She did not give him her number when she left, and he did not ask for it. She went home that night, thinking about the conversation more than she expected to. Nana found professional reasons to stay in touch. He emailed her about a work-related opportunity. He mentioned a gallery she had said she wanted to visit. None of it felt forced or like a strategy. It felt like someone who was genuinely paying attention. She was cautious. More than cautious, she was suspicious. She had just come out of a relationship that had slowly made her smaller, and the last thing she wanted was to step into another situation with a dominant man who would do the same thing. She said this to Nana at some point, directly, because she had decided she was done softening her words for people. She told him she was not interested in being someone's option or someone's project. She told him she had just spent 3 years losing herself, and she was not about to do it again. He did not argue with her, or try to convince her she was wrong. He looked at her for a moment and said, "That is exactly why I am not rushing you. A person who loves you right does not need you to be less than you are." She did not say anything after that. She just sat with it. That evening, alone in her apartment, something in her chest loosened a little. Not dramatically, just quietly, like something that had been tightly wound finally letting go a little. She picked up one of her brushes that night. She started painting again. It was nothing special, just colors on a small canvas, no plan, no goal. But she painted for 2 hours, and when she stopped, she felt more like herself than she had in a long time. Then Kofi came back. Word had reached him, because in tight social circles, word always reaches people, that Adayeze had been seen with Nana. And suddenly Kofi was at her door on a Tuesday evening, unannounced, looking sorry in that practiced way of his. He said the other woman had been a mistake. He said Adayeze was the one he truly loved. He said all the things she had once needed to hear from him. A few months earlier, those words would have undone her completely. She would have cried, and let him in, and told herself this time would be different. But standing at her door that evening, looking at him, she felt something she had not expected. Nothing. Not anger, not sadness. Just a very clear and calm kind of seeing. She saw him as he actually was. Not the man she had needed him to be. Not the version she had told herself existed, but just a person who had not valued her, and was now uncomfortable with the consequences of that. She told him she was glad he had found some clarity. She told him she genuinely hoped he figured himself out. And then she said goodbye and closed the door. She stood in her hallway after the door was shut. She waited for the wave of second-guessing to come. The voice that usually said, "Maybe you are making a mistake. Maybe you should have heard him out more. Maybe you were too cold." It did not come. Her hands were completely steady. That was new. That was different. Life did not suddenly become perfect after that. That is not how real life works. There were still hard mornings. There were still evenings when she felt lonely, in ways that were difficult to explain. Healing is not a straight line, and anyone who tells you otherwise has probably not done much of it. But things were different now, in ways that mattered. She was painting again, properly. Not just small canvases, but big ones. She had reconnected with friends she had drifted from. She was making decisions based on what she actually wanted, not what would keep someone else comfortable. And Nana was there. Not in a way that took up too much space. In a way that felt like company, rather than possession. He made her laugh. He challenged her in conversations in a way that made her think harder, not feel smaller. He showed up when he said he would, and did not make her wonder where she stood with him. One evening, they were sitting on her floor, surrounded by her paintings, just talking about nothing in particular, and she thought to herself, this is what it was always supposed to feel like. Not the drama, not the walking on eggshells, not the constant adjusting of herself to fit into someone else's life, just this. Easy, honest, real. People sometimes ask Adeyeze how she got through it, how she walked out of that party without falling apart, how she closed the door on Kofi without going back. She says the same thing every time. She did not find her strength because of Nana. She found it before she even knew Nana existed, in that parking lot, sitting alone in her car in the dark. In every morning, she chose not to call. In every small, quiet moment of choosing herself over the easier, more familiar option. Nana was not her rescue. He was what came after the rescue, the part that felt like a reward for all the hard work of learning to value herself again. The night Kofi announced his new relationship to a room full of their friends, he thought he was showing her she could be replaced. What he actually did was accidentally show her that she had been standing in the wrong place for a very long time. She did not leave because she stopped loving him. She left because she finally started loving herself, and once that happened, there was no going back. End.